No, sir.
$200, you cheater.
How can you cheat at Monopoly?
I know I had a hotel on Boardwalk before I went into the bathroom.
But you was in there so long, when you came back, the hotel was condemned.
Remember when Primetime wasn't afraid to get real? Good Times wasn't just another 70s sitcom. It was a bold, funny, and sometimes brutally honest look at family life in the Chicago projects. The show followed James and Florida Evans, their 3 kids, and their nosy neighbor Willona as they tried to keep their heads above water in a Chicago housing project, finding laughs and love even when money was tight. Airing on CBS from 1974 to 1979, it was groundbreaking television that TV Guide later ranked as one of the 100 best shows of all time. But behind those laughs and that groundbreaking storytelling was plenty of off-screen drama. Stars and producers clashing over the show's direction, cast feuds that lasted decades, and even a lawsuit with a not-so-happy ending. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts about Good Times you probably never knew, from surprise guest stars and behind-the-scenes battles, to the real stories that inspired the Evans family, and trust us, you won't believe the feud at number 1. But first, be sure to like and subscribe, because it helps us continue to uncover these TV gems to share with fans just like you. Now, let's get into it with number 15, the family feud you didn't see. Whether you caught Good Times during its original run or discovered it in reruns after school with a bowl of cereal, you knew the Evans family didn't have it easy. They were broke and life kept throwing them curveballs, but what you loved was how they stuck together through it all.
If he don't win first prize for talent, he's bound to win it for guts.
I'm gonna leave it up to you, Mama. Fix anything you want for my victory dinner.
You had Esther Rolls Florida, preachy but wise. John Amos as James, trying to keep a job and keep everyone in line. Bernadette Stannis as Thelma, the smart one you had a crush on or wanted to be like. Ralph Carter's Michael, who was always down for the culture, and Jimmy Walker turning JJ's antics into comedy gold. Sure, they were struggling, but they had each other's backs, right?
Thank you, brothers. On behalf of my 6th sister and us, we'd like to say thank you for your kindness and generosity.
Well, I hate to break it to your inner kid, but behind the scenes, some TV family members could barely stand each other. Here was the tea that would have blown your mind back then. Jimmy Walker admitted in interviews that during the entire run of the show, he basically didn't talk to John Amos or Esther Roll unless the script told him to. We're talking seasons of awkward silence between takes. It was like they were total strangers when the cameras weren't rolling.
We were never friends. We never talked. If you said at that time, call Esther and ask her about, I wouldn't even have her number. I couldn't have called John. I wouldn't have had his number.
And here's where it got messy. As JJ became the breakout star, every kid in America was walking around and yelling, DY-NO-MITE!
Happy, bright, narrow man and pure dynamite!
Roll and Amos got seriously annoyed. They thought the writers were turning the show into the JJ Comedy Hour, complete with all the stereotypes they were trying to avoid. In a 1975 Ebony interview, Roll straight up said the show had made JJ more stupid as it went on, and called him a terrible role model for young black viewers. Imagine hearing that from your TV mom. Walker felt it too. He talked about feeling the odd man out, skipped the dressing room hangouts, keeping to himself while watching his castmates basically choose sides. On one side you had the serious dramatic actors, and on the other, the guy everyone tuned in to see do his catchphrase. And if you want to know how deep this rift really went, when Esther Roll passed away in 1998, Jimmy Walker was the only main cast member who didn't show up at her funeral. Yeah, it was that bad. So, there you had it. The Evans family that taught us about sticking together through thick and thin, in real life couldn't wait to get away from each other. Sometimes the magic only happened when someone yelled action. Number 14, JJ's catchphrase almost didn't happen. Okay, think back to those days when you could make your friends crack up just by yelling one word at exactly the right moment. For Good Times, that magical word was DY-NO-MITE.
The happiness, man! Dynamite! I dug you on the tube, man!
And it almost never made it to your TV screen. Here's the wild part. Jimmy Walker thought the whole thing was ridiculous. The show's director, John Rich, was absolutely convinced it was comedy gold, and Norman Lear, the guy running the whole operation, hated it. But Rich kept pushing and finally talked everyone into letting JJ drop his DY-NO-MITE just once per episode. That's all it took to change TV forever.
Hello! Aren't you glad you lit your fingers do the walking, because you got kids dynamite doing the talking.
By the time season 3 rolled around, the studio audience was so ready for it that Walker could barely step through the apartment door without the place erupting in cheers. You probably remember doing it too. Kids were shouting it on every playground in America. Your parents were dropping it at the office, and suddenly DY-NO-MITE was everywhere. We're talking t-shirts, commercials for Panasonic tape players, and yeah, there was even a kids magazine called DYNOMITE that ran for almost 20 years. Whether that was a coincidence or clever marketing, JJ's catchphrase had become a full-blown cultural phenomenon.
A dynamite!
Walker later spilled that he'd actually based JJ's whole vibe on Ed Norton from The Honeymooners. You know, Art Carney's goofy sewer-working character, but it was that one explosive word that turned him into the breakout star. The Evans family was dealing with some heavy stuff: poverty, sickness, crime, all the real problems hitting black families in the 70s, but let's be honest, half of America tuned in just waiting for JJ to drop that explosive catchphrase. Number 13, the age gaps that fooled everyone. You know how some things from your childhood just don't add up when you look back? Well, here's one that'll mess with your head. The Evans family ages were completely bonkers and none of us caught on. On screen, James and Florida looked like they'd been married forever, raising kids and dealing with life like any other middle-aged couple.
I'll fix dinner.
Don't worry about no dinner. Just sit down and relax. Well, Florida, it sure is good to have you home.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Thank you, James.
In one episode, Florida even mentioned that James was 3 years older than her, and we totally believed it, but here's the kicker. In real life, Esther Roll was actually 19 years older than John Amos. She could have been his mom, not his wife. Meanwhile, John Amos was only 8 years older than Jimmy Walker and just 14 years older than Bernadette Stannis. So, while he was supposed to be this experienced father figure keeping his teenage kids in line, in real life he was barely out of their age bracket himself.
What the hell, baby? I mean, it's our son's big day. He's gonna be 18. I want to give him something better than I got when I turned 18.
What was that?
A draft notice.
But John Amos sold that fatherly authority so convincingly that we never questioned it. He had that withered, seen-it-all presence that made you believe he'd been through decades of hard work and raising kids. The guy was such a pro that he made us forget he was closer in age to his kids than his wife. Just goes to show how good makeup and solid acting can sell any story, even when the math doesn't add up. Number 12, the twist that changed Good Times forever. Now, if you grew up watching Good Times, there's one moment that probably still gives you chills.
Damn!
That gut-punching opening of Season 4 wasn't just devastating to watch, it was basically the show's way of dealing with some serious behind-the-scenes drama. See, John Amos had already been shown the door after going to war with the producers. He was furious about what they'd done to JJ, watching him transform from a goofy big brother into what Amos saw as a walking stereotype. And he wasn't keeping quiet about it either.
I wasn't the most diplomatic guy, like I said, in those days, and they got tired of having their lives threatened over jokes. So they said, to tell you what, why don't we kill him off, and we'll all get on with our lives. Life's too short.
Esther Roll was right there with him, publicly calling JJ a clown and a horrible role model in magazine interviews. By the end of Season 4, Roll had had enough too and walked away, leaving the Evans kids basically orphaned. The writers scrambled to fix things by moving Florida and her new husband to Arizona and having Willona step up as the new mother figure, but let's be real, it just wasn't the same show anymore.
What is going wrong in this family? You're all coming in late, don't have your meals together anymore. You don't even see each other for days at a time. Y'all are getting on my nerves.
Roll did come back for the final season after the producers promised to dial back the JJ antics, but the magic was gone. The show limped to its conclusion, a shadow of what it used to be. And here's the wild part. Norman Lear might have fired John Amos, but apparently he couldn't stay mad. A few years later, Lear brought him back for 704 Hauser, a reboot of All in the Family. So while James Evans got one of the most shocking death moments in TV history, Norman Lear and John Amos clearly figured out how to work together again down the road. By the way, we covered 704 Hauser in our 1994 TV flops video. The link is in the description if you missed it. Number 11, Janet Jackson's sitcom roots, and how she roasted them later. Before Janet Jackson took control and won a bunch of Grammys, if you know, you know, She was a good kid on Good Times playing Penny, the sweet little girl Willona adopted to save her from an abusive home. It was heavy stuff for a sitcom, and honestly, it was some of the show's best writing. Janet absolutely nailed it too.
Well, the truth is, I went downtown to see an old Mae West movie, and I love Mae West movies.
You couldn't help but fall in love with her character and chuckle about her sweet crush on JJ. Fast forward to her superstar days, and Janet got the chance to revisit her Good Times roots in the most Janet Jackson way possible, by completely roasting it on SNL in 2004. Picture this. Janet playing Penny again, but this time in a totally ridiculous parody that cranked everything up to 11. Maya Rudolph was doing double duty as both Thelma and Willona. Tracy Morgan showed up as everyone's favorite Superintendent Bookman, and Kenan Thompson had Florida's mannerisms down perfectly. The whole sketch basically treated the Evans apartment like it was some kind of disaster magnet where tragedy struck every 5 minutes. They weren't wrong. That family went through more drama than a soap opera, but that's what made the parody so perfect. It proved that Good Times had become such a cultural touchstone that people were still referencing it decades later. And you gotta love that Janet was totally game to poke fun at her own TV history. Not every superstar would be willing to go back and laugh at where they started, but Janet, she knew it was all part of her story. Number 10, the Fields family's Good Times connection. Okay, here's a connection that'll blow your mind if you're a child of the 80s. Remember Tootie from The Facts of Life, that adorable chatterbox? Well, years before Kim Fields was cracking jokes at Eastland Academy, both she and her real mom, Chip Fields, had multiple appearances on Good Times. Chip originally auditioned to play Thelma Evans, but didn't get the part. The producers clearly liked what they saw, though, because they kept bringing her back. First, she played Rochelle, one of JJ's dates in Season 2's two-part episode JJ's New Career. Then, the following season, they cast her as Penny's abusive mother in one of the show's darkest storylines.
Didn't I tell you to come straight home from school?
Yes, Mama.
But you disobeyed me, didn't you?
Talk about range, going from JJ's love interest to one of the series' most disturbing villains. And Kim Fields also popped up on the show as one of Penny's classmates, so you had future Tootie and her real-life mom both making their mark on Good Times in completely different ways. It's one of those perfect, wait, what? TV moments that shows how interconnected the world of 70s and 80s television really was. Number 9, the guest role that changed Gary Coleman's life forever. Before he became the breakout star of Different Strokes, Gary Coleman was quietly testing the sitcom waters. Norman Lear spotted him in a Harris Bank commercial and thought, that kid's a star.
You can never save too much money.
You should have a Harris banker.
You should have a Hubert doll.
To prove it, Lear slipped Coleman into a few of his shows. On Good Times, Coleman showed up twice as Gary James. First in Season 5, Episode 24, That's Entertainment Evans Style, and again in Season 6, Episode 5, Florida Gets a Job.
Funny little fellow.
Oh, fresh blood.
And on The Jeffersons, another Lear vehicle, Coleman showed up as Raymond, George's nephew, in one episode.
Hi.
Who are you?
I'm your nephew.
This wasn't some quick walk-on either. Coleman was front and center in the episode, showing off the same wit and timing that would soon make him famous. The tests worked. Lear decided Coleman needed a show of his own, and Different Strokes was born. Coleman didn't just star in it, he carried it, becoming one of the biggest child actors of the late 70s and 80s, and a true pop culture phenomenon. Number 8, the theme song was a 70s banger. You know how some theme songs are catchy and others are powerful? Good Times said, why not both? The theme song had a gospel groove with lyrics that punched you in the gut and lifted you back up, usually in the same breath.
Temporary layoffs. Good times.
Temporary layoffs? Good Times. That's bleak, but also oddly hopeful, like the show itself. Written by Dave Grusin with lyrics by Alan and Marilyn Bergman, the Good Times theme was about surviving the system and staying grounded in family. It wasn't just a bop, it had a message. And who sang it? Well, that powerhouse opening vocal is Jim Gilstrap, joined by Motown's Blinky Williams, and yes, they absolutely went off. But here's the part that's tripped people up for decades. What are the actual lyrics? Even Chappelle's show made a whole bit out of this. It's right up there with Hold Me Closer Tony Danza in the Misheard Lyrics Hall of Fame. Listen to this part and tell us what you think in the comment section below. According to the DVD box set, streaming captions, and general hearsay, it's hanging in a chow line. At least that's what I always sang. But the Bergmans and series star Bernadette Stanis confirmed it. The real lyric is hanging in and jivin'. So now you know. The theme song's message was always joy through struggle, and that's exactly what Good Times delivered. Every single week. Now, since you're still here, be sure to like and subscribe. It lets us know you're loving this trip down memory lane. Now, let's get back to the countdown with number 7. Michael Evans was almost someone else. Before Ralph Carter became politically outspoken Michael Evans, the role almost went to someone else. Producers first hired Haywood Nelson, who'd later star as Dwayne on What's Happening.
Hey girls, gather round. Listen to what I'm putting down. Hey baby, I'm your handyman.
But when they spotted Broadway actor Ralph Carter, already seasoned from A Raisin in the Sun, they swapped him in. The reason was that Carter had more experience performing in front of a live audience, and the producers wanted someone who could handle the pressure of a studio crowd. And get this, even a young Lawrence Fishburne was considered for the part. Imagine seeing Morpheus spouting political one-liners about Black history in the Evans living room. Once Carter was in place, the writers loaded Michael up with the show's sharpest cultural commentary. He was the one pointing out racism, inequality, and politics, and the producers figured it would land softer coming from a kid.
Well, why did it have to be me?
You know, son, you got a lot of smarts. It'd be a shame to waste that God-given talent in a bad school.
If God gave me talent, it was meant to be used in my own neighborhood with my own people.
Still, it made Michael one of the most unique sitcom kids of the 1970s. Even cooler, Carter, Nelson, and Fishburne all grew up together and stayed close friends long after their child actor days. 3 different paths, 3 different careers, but all still tied back to those early auditions. Number 6, Bookman was more than a building superintendent. You probably remember Nathan Bookman as the building super who was terrible at his job and constantly caught heat from the Evans family and Willona. But Johnny Brown, the actor behind Buffalo Butt, was actually way more talented than his scheming character ever let on.
My 8-year-old daughter thinks she's Jewish, but we won't tell her any difference because we wanted to marry a doctor.
Before Bookman, Brown was doing his thing on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. You know, that wild sketch show your parents probably watched before you were born? The guy was a triple threat, a singer, dancer, and stand-up comic who'd worked with legends like Sammy Davis Jr. He even had his own recording deal and could do a spot-on Louis Armstrong impression.
Darling, it's so nice to have you back where you belong.
Here's something that'll blow your mind. Johnny Brown was actually considered for the role of Lamont on Sanford and Son, but he couldn't take it because he was already committed to Laugh-In. Talk about loyalty paying off in different ways. Can you imagine Fred Sanford dealing with Johnny Brown instead of Demond Wilson? Brown kept working well into the 90s and 2000s too, popping up on shows like Martin, The Wayans Brothers, and The Jamie Foxx Show. And here's a fun family connection. Brown's real-life daughter Sharon showed up on Good Times 2 playing Fun Girl in a Season 5 episode. Johnny Brown passed away in 2022 at 84, but his legacy goes way beyond those broken windows and leaky faucets. The man was a true entertainer who just happened to play one of TV's most memorable building supers. Part bumbling handyman, part schemer, but always entertaining. Number 5, James Evans almost didn't exist. Here's something that could have changed television history completely. James Evans almost never made it to Good Times, and if Esther Roll hadn't put her foot down, the whole show would have been totally different. When Florida first appeared on Maude, she was married to Henry, a firefighter also played by John Amos.
I'm Henry Evans.
I'm Walter Findlay. Come in.
But when Norman Lear decided to give Florida her own spinoff, his original plan was to ditch the husband entirely. He wanted Good Times to focus on a single mother struggling to raise her kids in the projects, thinking it would be grittier and more socially relevant.
You live with a man for 22 years. You wake up one morning and all of a sudden he's Superfly.
Esther Roll was like, absolutely not. She wasn't just being difficult either. She had some serious concerns. First off, viewers already knew Florida was married from watching Maude, so suddenly making her single would be weird and confusing. But more importantly, Roll felt strongly that showing another black family without a father figure would just reinforce harmful stereotypes that were already way too common on television. So she drew a line in the sand and told Lear straight up, no husband, no show. She wanted Florida to have a strong present father figure standing beside her, and she wasn't budging on that point. Lucky for us, Lear listened, brought back John Amos, changed the character's name from Henry to James, and television history was made. John Amos brought strength and dignity to the role of James Evans.
We used every trick in the world to get by. You all ought to see the budget Florida has to feed us on.
Yeah, it ain't enough to make a flea let out his belt.
Creating a character who proved that fathers matter both on screen and off. Amos passed away in 2024, but his portrayal of James Evans remains a cornerstone of television history. Number 4, Willona's style was purely her own. If you watched Good Times, you know Willona Woods was hands down the most stylish person in that Chicago housing project. While everyone else was just trying to get by, Willona was serving looks, bold colors, trendy cuts, and enough flair to make you forget she was living in the same building as the Evans family.
I recognize the mood. After my divorce, I was so low I could have milked a snake.
Willona, I don't know what you're talking about.
And here's the secret behind her killer style. Those fabulous outfits weren't coming from some TV wardrobe department. They were straight out of Janae Dubois' own closet. Instead of letting costume designers pick her clothes, Dubois basically said, "Thanks, but I've got this," and started bringing her own wardrobe to set. That personal touch made all the difference. Willona's style felt authentic because it really was. It was literally Janae being herself through her character. She once said her job as Willona was to make it right, fast, and funny, and she wasn't kidding about the wigs, the hats, and everything else being a dream come true.
Isn't it true, dear? Didn't you fall down? Who does that sucker think she's fooling?
The result was TV magic. You had this character who wasn't just talking about being a confident, independent woman, she was dressing the part too, in clothes that actually reflected the personality of the actress wearing them. Willona didn't just light up every scene with her wit, she lit it up with her authentic style. Janae Dubois passed away in 2020, but her legacy lives on through Willona's unforgettable presence. She proved that sometimes the best costume is just being yourself, fabulous wardrobe and all. Number 3, the stars who kept coming back. For a show that spent most of its time in one cramped Chicago apartment, Good Times was like a talent magnet. Seriously, if you go back and watch those episodes now, you'll be doing double takes at all the famous faces that wandered through the Good Times set. We're talking about people who were either already stars or about to become huge. Jay Leno making his TV debut in 1976, Debbie Allen before Fame, Carl Weathers before he was Apollo Creed, and even Boss Hogg himself, Sorrel Book, years before he was causing trouble in Hazard County. You've also got Robert Guillaume, John Witherspoon, Charlotte Rae, Cheryl Lee Ralph, and a bunch of other actors you'd recognize from your favorite 70s and 80s shows. But here's where it got really interesting. Some of these actors liked the show so much they kept coming back as completely different characters. Louis Gossett Jr. showed up first as Thelma's older brother, then later returned as Florida's brother Wilbert.
Hi, sis.
Theodore Wilson played both a theater owner and the unforgettable Sweet Daddy Williams.
Say is J.J. Near, tell him that Sweet Daddy Williams is here.
And B.B. Drake also pulled double duty as Savannah Jones in one season and Larry Baker's mom in another. Even the artwork had celebrity connections. All those paintings JJ was supposedly creating, they were actually done by acclaimed artist Ernie Barnes, whose elongated, soulful style gave the show its visual signature. His masterpiece, The Sugar Shack, now owned by Eddie Murphy, became iconic thanks to the show, and Barnes even showed up in a cameo himself. Looking back, Good Times was like the neighborhood everyone wanted to visit, sometimes more than once. Number 2, Lionel Jefferson co-created Good Times. Now, here's something that'll blow your mind. Remember Lionel Jefferson, George and Louise's son from All in the Family and The Jeffersons? Well, Mike Evans, the actor who played him, didn't just act in Norman Lear's shows, he actually helped create one of them. Evans teamed up with writer Eric Monti to pitch what would become Good Times. They sold their idea to Norman Lear, who loved the concept, but made some major changes, like bringing in Florida Evans from Maude to anchor the show.
We both slept kind of miserable, but James woke up happy.
Still, the heart of Good Times came straight from Monty and Evan's original vision. But here's where it gets complicated. Even though Evans co-created the show, he and Monty struggled to maintain creative control as the series developed. The power structure of television production meant that other writers started taking the show in different directions, leaving the original creators feeling sidelined from their own creation. Meanwhile, Evans had left his role as Lionel on the Jeffersons to focus on Good Times. Damon Evans, totally different guy, just confusing last name, stepped in to play Lionel. When Good Times ended, Mike eventually returned to reclaim his Lionel role after Damon moved on.
George! Look, Pop, it wasn't Jenny's idea not to tell you, it was mine. Yours, that's right. And the reason why I didn't want you to know is because of the way you're acting right now.
And here's a cool detail. While the Evans family surname was pure coincidence, naming the youngest son Michael was actually a tribute to Mike Evans himself. So even though the creative process got messy, at least one character kept his name alive in the show he helped bring to life. Mike Evans passed away in 2006, but his contribution to television history lives on through Lionel Jefferson and the Evans family he helped create. Number 1, the feud that didn't end well. Now here's the most heartbreaking story about Good Times, and it involves the guy who literally lived it before he wrote it. Co-creator Eric Monty didn't just imagine the Evans family struggles. He grew up in Chicago's Cabrini Green housing project and poured his real childhood into every script. Those cramped apartments, broken elevators, and the constant fight to make rent were all part of Monty's actual life that you just saw on TV.
Are you a professional man?
Yes.
Working with Mike Evans, Monty created something groundbreaking. The first network sitcom centered on a black family that was actually created by black writers. And Monty wasn't a one-hit wonder either. He went on to co-create What's Happening and wrote Cooley High, a movie that became a cultural touchstone for an entire generation. But Good Times became his biggest heartbreak. As the show got more popular, Monty watched Norman Lear and the other producers push him aside and turn his authentic family story into broader comedy.
You go ahead right now. There's something wrong when my nephew don't get all A's.
I beg your pardon?
You'll have to excuse my brother.
He felt like they were stealing his voice and his vision, turning something deeply personal into just another punchline factory. In 1977, Monty had had enough. He filed a massive lawsuit against Lear, CBS, and the producers for over $300 million, claiming they'd stolen his ideas and cut him out of his own creation. The case eventually settled for about $1 million in some residuals, money that Monty said never came close to making up for what they'd taken from him or the damage it did to his career. The wound never healed. When Norman Lear died in 2023, Monty admitted he'd never forgiven the man he once trusted with his life story. It's a painful reminder that while Good Times gave us laughter and unforgettable moments, it came at a heartbreaking cost to the person who made it all possible. So, there you have it. 15 weird, wild, and sometimes heartbreaking facts about Good Times. Which facts caught you by surprise, and which ones did we miss? Let us know in the comments section below, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next trip back through TV history. Until then, this is Remember When.